Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. Let me start by saying this is an extremely important bill as regards sexual offences bill and how it affects the victims, particularly girls, young girls specifically. Madam Speaker, what this bill actually seeks to address two issues. Let me start with a little peripheral one. It's defining the minister, and it's basically that is to line it with the Constitution. But Madam Speaker, I want to raise an issue there. What is in the Sexual Offences Act also defines the minister as a minister responsible for legal affairs and so on. What came through my mind, and you as a lawyer probably can guide on this, in this country today, who is the minister responsible for legal affairs? Is the Attorney General a minister? So it brings to my mind that even as we talk about the act itself, I have a feeling the act is hanging in terms of which minister should administer the act. Because the act says the minister responsible for legal affairs. The structure of the government as we know it, Madam Speaker, is that we have Attorney General who is sitting in the cabinet, but is the Attorney General, is she a minister by definition? So I think that as we align this with the Constitution is something we can look at. I don't know whether we can take advantage, or maybe we can look at in the Committee for the Implementation of the Constitution, which still exists, to look at that issue and define what a minister for legal affairs is. Other ministries, okay. When you say health, when you say education, we understand. But when you say legal affairs, there's an issue there. Madam Speaker, that was important to me, but I support the fact that we should align it with the Constitution. We're calling them cabinet secretary instead of minister. So that I support. The second issue in this is actually to support to give education regarding sexual offenses. I think this is extremely important. There are many issues that people actually don't realize. Even when somebody is affected, like issues of defilement or rape, how you conduct yourself immediately, how people conduct themselves immediately. Like they would say, okay, this has happened, let somebody take a bath and let's go and report. The moment you take a bath and go and report, you have actually destroyed the evidence. So people need to know exactly what happens if you are going to follow a legal process and how you report. We also know that even in the places where people report, when you go to the police stations and so on, the way people are treated is actually not supportive. Sometimes the victim actually, the behavior that seems to imply that the victim called this upon themselves. We need education in those areas so that the public should know that in many cases, this is somebody who has been grossly offended. And I think it's hard for people who have never been affected to understand how gross this violation is. I don't think there's any violation for a human being that is greater than a sexual offense that is inflicted on a person. So the psychological impact is huge. And there's need for widespread education to understand the circumstances surrounding it, the legal issues there are, the psychosocial issues, the physical trauma, and even the possible long-term physical and health impacts of this. These are things that should actually be known. And the bill itself is general enough so that we can literally craft many issues on that. So that bit on new section 46A, promote public awareness on sexual offenses through national education and information and campaigns. I support that because we can put literally everything on that. The circumstances surrounding it, what really happens, who are the perpetrators, how we deal with it. Because sometimes people put upon themselves alternative dispute resolution. I don't think this is a situation where you will want an alternative dispute resolution that, oh, this is something has happened within the family, now I think let it just go, or some compensation. The family may feel that there's been compensation, but what about the victim themselves? Throughout their life, will that compensation really heal what they are going through? So that is extremely important. The other thing is the legal processes that are involved. How do people go about it? There is also an issue of stigma and shame. So people don't even want to come out and say, particularly if it happens in private, and in many cases, it will actually happen within families. Then people don't want, because of the stigma and the shame, they don't want to come out and say what happened. So people live with this for years, and you have children who are affected for life, or something that was hidden and kept, because even the people who are seeking peace did not, they looked at the relationship within the families, within the area, but they did not look at how it affects the person themselves, the victim. So I think that is important, that with that area of promotion, we can broaden it, it can be wide, and the two cabinet secretaries that are involved will really have to really get a very huge program. And the issue here, we are giving the task primarily to the cabinet secretary in charge of legal affairs. But to a large extent, the education cabinet secretary will actually have a larger impact, have a larger mandate in terms of education. Schools are the best areas for changing people's character. So again, how will that be done? And I support when you have A and you have B. When you have to be, again, in consultation with the cabinet secretary responsible for matters related to education, again, that, as I said, is a big one. And it's, again, a big area. And we have to look at, when we come to education, when victims, particularly young girls, and even boys now, people have never, boys get sexually molested. Again, these are areas where a lot is hidden. How does it affect the education? The psychologically, how do they perform after that? How does it affect their conduct, their behavior? They may actually drop out of school. They may actually be trans. They may actually be very rude and controllable in school without people really realizing that the basic issue is what affected them. And when it comes to girls, Madam Speaker, if they get pregnant, leave alone the stigma that now this happened to you, probably you are not clean, now do you come back in class and be with us? How are they affected by their mates in the school? How are they handled by teachers? Even teachers themselves actually need to be educated. So that is important. But should they be pregnant, then you have another big issue. I know in this country we are relaxed about it. Girls can go and go back to school after they've been pregnant, but I don't think there is a legal framework that people can say, you cannot send me away from this school, because sometimes they actually go to another school. So that we need a legal framework on how do you handle them? What support do they need? And it's not only in probably senior schools and even up to university, even up to colleges. People are still affected if this happens. Are there any ways that they actually can be supported? Because this actually makes them vulnerable persons when this has occurred. So now when we are talking of vulnerable persons, somebody who has been a victim of sexual offense becomes themselves vulnerable in the future. And therefore it is important that that is taken into consideration, particularly if they become pregnant. Do we give them the support? We give them the support. How do they look after? Do they take the two roles? Because, Madam Speaker, let me tell you, biological forces are much greater than social forces. If you take a girl who has gotten pregnant and you put the welfare of their child against education, they'll pick the welfare of the child. So they will need to have the support so that the welfare of the child is taken care of so that they can continue with the education. That's a specific support we should look at. So, Madam Speaker, I see this as an extremely important bill that we should support. But as I said, the area of definition of the Cabinet Secretary is something we look at. With that, Madam Speaker, I support.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Malindi. Honorable Amina Mnyanzi.
Mheshimiwa Spika, asante sana. Nasimama kuunga mkono mswada wa marekebisho ya makosa ya kijinsia kama ilivyopendekezwa katika mswada huu wa marekebisho katika kifungu cha 40